Christy? Sure. If you
Hand it out.
Okay.
I bought a newspaper.
I did. Yes, this was in the newspaper today?
No, it wasn't that.
All right, then we can go.
Well, it came out Friday.
Right.
Afternoon? How are you? Fine, thank you. Yourself? All right. Terry, where do you go?
What do we need to do? Are we on right now? Oh, we are? Oh, okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Nantucket Finance Committee meeting for Monday, February 22nd. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to take a moment of silence. Some sad news. A friend of this committee and a prominent member of the community and on the school committee passed away last evening in a tragic accident. And Robin Harvey certainly was a pillar in this community, and like I said, a friend of this committee, and I'm, for one, very saddened by her passing. So I'd like to take a moment of silence before we start the meeting. All right, thank you. The meeting is called to order. Before we start, we are on television. I'd like to introduce the members of our committee. On my right, or the left of the TV screen, is Christy Kickham, David Worth, Clifford Williams, John Tiffany, Craig Sperry, and Joe Grouse. We are missing Steve Morey and Jim Kelly, and I'm not sure they'll be attending, but they may. Is there any public comment today that is on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay, hearing none. There is some minutes in our packet specified from January 20th and 22nd. On any questions or comments on either of those dates? Joe? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, two very minor, I think, corrections on the minutes from Tuesday, January 20th.
Yes.
Page 2, there was an answer by Chief Pittman that said 2.5 officers per thousand, has 3 per thousand in the winter. However, in the summer it drops to 0.04 per thousand. I believe that number is off by a factor of 10. It'd be 0.4.
Okay, all right.
And that's kind of a nit, but
no, that's right. So I see where you are, right above the FY 216 budget, where it says 0.04 should be 0.4.
In the summer it drops to 0.4, and I don't have the exact figures that Chief Pittman used, but kind of using round figures, I think it should be 0.4, not 0.04.
I'm going to look at Mrs. Gibson. Nod your head. Is that 0.4?
I don't know.
Remember?
It's just,
Accurate.
Okay.
it was just one of those things that looked like it would mean the population on the island would have to be gigantic.
Okay. All right. Well,
I mean, more gigantic than we all know it to be.
Well, that sounds reasonable. That's fine. So that change, unless any objections, that change is fine. Any other? Yes.
And then, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have one other,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also on page 2 of 5 of the January 22nd minutes, I don't know how to check this, but there was another answer by Bob Gardner about the current permit for the island and the amount of water that gets pumped. And it says a year-round population of 7,800 to 7,900 people with a seasonal population of 12.2. And Terry highlighted one of those numbers in the...
Right. I see that.
I just note that number looks a little fluky to me, and I don't know if that was an exact quote from Mr. Gardner's, discussion or what, but...
You're nodding your head.
Right, and I don't know how to correct it either. It just looked funny to me.
John?
Yeah, I think he was referring to when he talks about population, he talks about hookers to the water, not number of people, but number of hookers.
Right, but I think he was talking about this permit that the Wannacomet Water Company has, and the amount of water it can produce, and anyway, it just looked like a number that was off from what seems to be commonly discussed as the population of the island. So I just don't know.
Well, can I make this
whether
suggestion?
that's something that can be researched. And
Yeah, I think before we take up these minutes, I'll make a note to contact Mr. Gardner, and yeah, it's corrected. So I certainly don't want to change that without his approval. All right, let's see. I'm just going to write this down. Craig, did you have a correction?
From before where Joe was bringing up that information on the 20th, there was the word officers was misspelled in that same paragraph.
Terry, you want to correct that? No. Same place.
Same.
So January 20th, page 2. Okay. So we will not take up January 22nd at this time. How about let's go back to January 20th. Any other comments or questions? And if not, would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve in a second. Thank you. Discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I will contact Mr. Gardner just on January 22nd. Any other comments or questions that anyone can think of? Okay. All right, great. So that's it for minutes. Then why don't we go back? The next item is committee reports. The audit committee has been rescheduled for next Monday at 1 p.m., and the auditors will either be here or by Skype to talk about the management letter. And I have no other committee reports. Anybody else have any committee reports? Oh, David? Yeah.
No committee report, but on the audit committee, is there, you're just reviewing the management letter?
Yeah, it's a presentation of the management letter by the auditors.
Yeah. Anything, have you seen the draft
Yeah,
of
it looks pretty good. I suppose I could send the draft out. It looks pretty good. I'm looking, is it okay to send the draft out? Yeah, I'll send it out. It looks good. I think it looks good. Good, yeah. I'll send, yeah. Another note. Send draft. Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Any other committee reports? All right. Moving on to number 5 is a declaration of an emergency situation to allow deficit spending for snow removal budget. Brian or Libby, who would like to present that? So let's ask you to just come to the microphone. We're on tape. Thank you. Brian, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
So what we're looking for today is actually a vote to authorize expenditures in excess of the appropriation in the snow and ice budget it's under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 31D, which allows the FinCom to vote to authorize the expenditures in excess in concurrence with the town manager.
Okay.
Then what we do is we'll send a letter to DOR notifying them that we have taken this action. It allows us to deficit spend. It does not preclude us from transferring from available funds at some point before the end of the year. What it does is it also allows us to raise it on the recap if we so desire to do it that way. But we need this declaration to continue to be able to spend from this point forward, since we have encumbrances and expenditures that would be in excess of the budget at this point in time.
Makes sense, sure. Questions from the committee? Christie?
Fine, so this is a one-time vote.
It's a one-time vote.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it, why don't they do that every year, just to rule out having to do that before any proposed storm or after the fact?
Typically, a lot of communities will wait till they get right near the budget to do it because they don't know how it's typical practice not to do it too early. In the community that I was in previous to this, we would do it, hate to say at the last minute, but at the last minute, we would wait to see how the year was going before we would do it.
Okay.
And I assume we're out of close to.
With the encumbrances that will be in there, we actually would potentially be in a deficit situation, so we'd have to actually remove some bills to be paid without this declaration, or come before you for a reserve fund transfer. So,
Can we make this a performance-based approval?
unfortunately, no. Sorry.
Well, we won't expound on that. I think we're all thinking the same thing, though. Further questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, then, if anyone's so inclined, I would ask for a motion to declare an emergency situation. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion to declare an emergency situation.
Just a quick
Oh,
question,
Joe, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Brian, is this sort of an open-ended, kind of like Christie's? We don't have to, if we go even further into deficit or spending, it's not like you come back.
No, this authorization allows us to spend at this point,
What
to
are we-
continue what we need, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to declare an emergency situation to allow deficit spending for snow removal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck. I'm afraid to ask what you need it for. Okay. Next item is a review of 30% of town share for room occupancy tax for fiscal year 2016. As you may recall, there was a citizens warrant article at last year's town meeting on a non-binding referendum in regards to this tax that passed. And in light of that, the chairman of the Visitor Services Advisory Committee, Mr. Reed, and I have had a few discussions on educating us on the visitor services standpoint of this tax. And we set up a time for that Mr. Reed come in and to give a presentation, and allows you to ask some questions. In your packet on January 8th and today, you received a document that was composed by town administration and finance, and a very good document that breaks down some of the costs. And so the idea is to try to specify what money is spent from the room tax. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Mr. Reed, come up to the microphone, and to give us a little presentation and go back and forth some questions. And if you'd like to introduce members of your committee that are here too also. Phil, that'd be good. Oh, sorry. I'm going to be quiet now.
Other than thanking you for the opportunity.
We're all ears.
Okay. Okay. I'll start off with former chairman, Gene Mann, Diane Flaherty, Wheezy Swift in the front, and then our two key staff members, our executive director, Kate Hamilton Pardee, and our office administrator, David Sharp.
Thank you. I think we all know. Thank you very much.
We have other members who, one is in Florida and one is busy working at the moment, and another one apparently forgot. Okay. We finally have a full committee of 7, so we're pleased with that.
Very good.
Do any of you have any idea how much money has been collected by the room occupancy tax over the past 20 years?
No.
Okay. In the first 16 years that the tax was collected, and we're talking about the 4% rate, we collected $18,113,156. In the last 4.5 years, going to 6%, we've collected $11,703,657. That brings us up to a total of $29,816,000, and we're going to cross the $30 million within the next year. We're so close to it. I merely give you these two figures because it signifies how important that kind of revenue is to the town. Granted, it's over a number of years, but it still is a very positive cash flow for the town. I hope I do a little better this one than I did at the town meeting. I had
I think you did fine at the town meeting.
I feel, if you might, before you jump in, is that the 18 and the 11, is that the town share, or is that the gross amount?
That's the gross amounts that came in.
Okay, and then
gross
we
amounts to the
split it,
town.
right, with the,
You share it with us.
no, but not with the state, this is all?
Oh, no, that's the Nantucket share.
Perfect, thank you.
Again, I'll start with my written comments. Good afternoon, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts and concerns with you. This is a Finance Committee meeting, and so we're talking with some very important figures. Nantucket's hospitality industry has 2 major sectors, lodging and restaurants. These 2 sectors of our economy are currently generating, without cost to the town, just under $4 million of annual revenue. The meals tax is in the $860,000 range, and we're just crossing the $3 million range. All the collection, reporting, and submitting of these taxes is done by the licensed businesses at their own expense. They also pay for their operating licenses, their fire and health and building department inspections, and the property taxes. I feel that the lodging industry pays their own way, and then some. For this meeting, I will concentrate on the $3 million of the room occupancy tax, because that is what funds 100% of the Visitor Services Department, its Information Bureau, satellite kiosks, and Children's Beach program expenses. And recently, the department has also absorbed several of the responsibilities formerly managed and paid for through the Park and Recreation Department budget. Last year's ATM, as the chairman briefly reminded you, the voters challenged the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee's recommendation to not support the 30% allocation of the room's occupancy tax to visitor services. Since then, the town administration and finance departments have been preparing spreadsheets showing what they consider are tourism-related expenses incurred by town departments, and another copy of that was just passed out to you. They feel that the town is dedicating more than 30% to visitor-related services. We have had 2 meetings regarding this and continue to request that the Visitor Service Advisory Committee have input and approval of what is directly charged to this department, as we seriously disagreed with some of the services being charged to us. During discussions with Libby, I have stressed that a lack of transparency regarding how the room's occupancy tax was being spent was a major factor for the development of Article 33. That was drafted by the Nantucket Lodging Association. Another factor was the trend of reducing the department's operating budget during 4 of the past 5 years. Now, all unused funds, no matter what we get, are always returned back to the town. The Visitor Services Advisory Committee and the Nantucket Lodging Association have a genuine interest in knowing where the $3 million are being spent. Collectively, we need to continue to increase services, public facilities, and programs that appeal to a broad base of residents and visitors. We must try to complement the ever-increasing expectations of today's more demanding traveler, if we are to remain our world-class image. Maintain it. Now, the key thing, it's not the issue of the 30%. That's what came up, and that's where the emotion was. It's the challenge of not being able to really plan and be productive, since we don't know what our budget will be from year to year. If Visitor Service Advisory Committee had a percentage budget that would grow with the room's occupancy tax, we could, working with town administration and the Nantucket Lodging Association, that's the group who hears directly from their visitors what they like, need, and want, we could then plan and develop specific recommendations to make every visitor experience a positive one. With regard to transparency, it is our hope that, like the town of Provincetown, our finance department would be willing to post on their website the quarterly revenue received from both rooms occupancy tax and meal tax with a distribution formula. Show the percentages and dollars that go to the general fund, to tourism, i.e. visitor services, and to the town's capital fund, or whatever funds are selected by the Finance Committee and administration and this board. Administration and finance have drafted a transparency document in response to our concerns. It's a good start. It just needs to go public in the simplest form. I would hope that this committee would support this concept and work with the finance department, administration, and the Board of Selectmen to see it implemented. It would be a positive answer to a lot of questions that keep being asked. And my final comments before opening this up for any question or comments that the committee might have are about an old and sensitive subject, but a valid one that just won't go away. The rooms occupancy tax revenue provided by the licensed lodging industry has fewer than 1,000 rooms available for visitors. That means that on any given night during peak season, there could be approximately 2,000 to 2,500, looking at two and a half people per room is the typical occupancy. There could be that between 2,000 and 2,500 overnight guests. The transparency document a distribution spreadsheet for tourism-related expenses incurred by various town departments does not take into consideration the approximate 30,000-plus visitors staying in rental houses. The group, which is twice the size of our year-round population and lodging industry guests combined, uses many municipal services but does not provide any direct revenue to the town, and they use a majority of the seasonal services, several which are disproportionately charged to the Visitor Services Department. For years, the lodging industry has had to tax its guests and on at least 2 occasions has tried to have the real estate rental industry support or not fight to defeat its efforts to file home rule legislation with the state permitting Nantucket to collect a rental tax on seasonal private homes, but to no avail. This tax, we believe, could generate several millions of new dollars in revenue at no additional cost to the town. The agencies that rent homes would collect the tax from the tenant in advance and handle those funds in the same manner as the lodging and restaurant businesses have been doing for years. It's food for thought. Even the state legislature is beginning to soften its resistance to this tax. New Hampshire and Florida both have it, and it doesn't hurt tourism one single bit. Maybe it's time to try that one again. Nantucket would be the winner. I'm willing to open this up. I have packets for each of you.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd like to distribute those. David, do you want to help me with this, please? Yeah. How about keep one for the subject for what I talk about? Grab those, please. Just keep it put together. Okay. Thanks. Each of these packets contains four different parts. It's tough not having a podium sometimes when you speak. You can get a little
We'll take your-
more-
you're doing
a little
fine. Take
more
your time.
organized sometimes. The first part of the packet, first section, is the room tax revenue and department budget. There's 2 pages to that. The next part is the proposed, I said acceptable charges, and I think the better word would be proposed appropriate charges in the transparency document. And then there's the third package shows Provincetown and how and their website and how they do it. You just go online, hit Town of Provincetown, go over to Finance Department, and there's the information very nicely distributed for you. There's an enclosed list of the projects that Visitor Services has done. This has been a can-do committee over the years. It was formed that way, and I got back on because Mary Ann's article in the Inky Mary years ago, or 3 years ago, I think, it just blasted the heck out of the quality of the committee. And I felt kind of injured about that because I had been one of the original founders of it, and back when I was president of the chamber, we helped create that. So I got back on so I could hopefully change some of that public perception, and that's part of what I'm doing here, is trying to explain to you some of the value of the rooms occupancy tax, the value of the Visitor Services Committee to the community, and then I have also enclosed a copy of my comments as the fourth and least important thing.
Okay.
On there. But if you have any questions, I'd be very glad to
Okay,
answer
great.
them.
What's that?
I know.
Questions from any members of the committee?
And I would add that if you don't have questions tonight, and in reading this, which I hope you will do one more time,
Yep.
please feel free to call me. I'm on the phone book, and if you can't, call Kate at Visitor Services or David, and they'll give you my numbers. But we're not fighting with the town. We're trying to work with the town on this. And, you know, we talk about that 30%. If you gave us, and my staff might kill me on this one, but if you gave us 15%, we would have an increase over this year's budget. and it would be larger than any budget we've had in the past. So let's put this percentage, the 30%, to rest somewheres. But a fixed percentage at some level would be so helpful to this organization. It doesn't have to be big, but allow us to grow. If the room tax goes up, we grow. If the room tax goes down, we shrink the budget.
Okay.
That's where we're coming from.
Cliff, you have a question?
I'm trying to remember from last year when we asked questions about the 30%, and I guess the answer was that things have morphed from way back when that was applied to consolidation of different parts of the I guess the town and the way we do business. So I guess what you're trying to say is that you've been unable to get either the selectmen or town administration to give you a solid budget versus, for a dollar figure or a percentage figure?
We get a dollar figure. There's no question about that. We negotiate for that. What we're looking for is a fixed percentage that we could say, okay, we can grow with the room occupancy tax.
Okay.
Okay. Christie?
And when 30%, when we were much lower, made a lot more sense. But we're now approaching $3 million. So 15%, I'm not going to say I want 15%. I'm saying we can discuss this. This should be an open discussion, and hopefully that we get to the point where we could have a fixed percentage. It doesn't have to be forever. It could be, try it for a couple of years, see how it works. We are flexible.
Okay. That's good to know. Christie?
Phil, you mentioned something about the transparency of the revenue, on how it's spent. Would that be applied to the town part of it, as well as the percent that goes to the
If you stuck with the
visitor
30%, the whatever we didn't spend as a Visitor Services Advisory Committee should be shown on that to say the town is spending. Hey, we're putting 30%. Provincetown says they put 35% into the tourism account. We have no problem with. I think the town is acknowledging this. Libby and the finance department have put together the figures that they show. We question whether lifeguards should be charged directly to the visitor services, $302,000 or something. That's a questionable one. Is it a tourist-related service? Fine. Take it out of, if we were getting 15%, take it out of the 85% that the town's getting. You can let them show it as visitor-related expenses incurred by other departments of the town or supported by the town. This town has got to support tourism, and it does. I think the town needs good publicity about what it's doing for tourism, and I think we deserve to know where that money, how much, I think they deserve to know, what the industries do for the town with revenue. Everyone complains about tourists, but they generate some money here.
Yeah, just in a follow-up, would you be amenable to whatever the percents are going either way, either to the town or visitor services, to both those being transparent?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We wish to hide nothing.
Yeah.
We have nothing to hide. I see a hand up over
I
there.
was waiting.
I'm sorry.
I might sure you're done.
No.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, excuse me, I don't talk into the microphone enough. Every year the department puts together a budget, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And I'm grasping a little bit, because what you're suggesting is that they put together a budget based on a percentage, and therefore where does the town have input to that budget if we just willy-nilly give you a percentage that you can spend, then
Okay, if you gave us a budget that equated to, say, $475,000 or something, okay? We would present that, we would then work with those numbers, present that budget back to the town, and the town has absolute veto power over any item in that budget, as they always have had. But it would be in a good faith thing that we're saying, okay, well, we know we don't want to spend 450 out of that, but we're not sure about that last, can we just leave that there? It comes back to the town if we don't use it. If they say, no, we have a tough year this year, Phil, we've got to reduce this budget to 425,000, then we have to go with that. But it would, from a planning point of view, which has been the difficult part, I mean, we plan to have, for example, an airport ambassador program installed this year. The airport was delighted to hear about it. They feel it's been missing. We asked for 25,000. The selectmen turned it down. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not a big item, and we feel it's one of the key ports of entry. Some form of hospitality out there would be welcome.
But I'm just trying to grasp what you're trying to do, because this department is a department of the town.
Right.
Okay. And therefore, but somehow you want some independence from the town. You were mentioning, like, the Board of Selectmen said, no, we decided not to approve that, which is their
prerogative.
Their prerogative.
Yep.
And in fact, it's their right to either approve it or not approve it. So I'm struggling with other than the fact that you want more money, but then you're saying, well, yeah, but we still leave it up to the town to say, even though we get a percentage, the town has a right to say, well, you're not going to get the percentage. So I don't understand where we're at.
Well, if it were to be that it would be a fixed percentage without the town, I don't think we can work within the town without giving the town some right of final approval or rejection. I don't think we're asking for that kind of autonomy. But we are saying, if there's an agreement that 15 to 20 or 25% of that room occupancy tax be dedicated to the Visitor Services Department, and let them present a budget within that range, and not say, well, that's ridiculous, but just say, okay, this is a fair request. We'll move it to the Finance Committee and the Selectmen and see what they say about it. I don't think I'm asking to have my cake and eat it too.
I understand. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how it's different than the way it is now.
We don't really have a percentage to work against. We would feel very comfortable if we had some percentage of anticipated room occupancy tax that we could then create our budget to that basis and not have it just rejected flatly, but rejected for cause only. Am I getting through or not, John?
You are. I have a problem with having a department having some special prerogatives as it relative to the town as far as getting a budget approved. In other words, I'm trying to figure out how what you're really trying to do here, Phil. You know what I mean? But it sounds to me like you want this department to be different than the other departments in the fact that they have some.
Well, we have an income source.
So do a lot of other departments, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So, we have a lot of departments with income sources. So.
Ours has been growing every single year, the source of our income.
Well, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Good point to bring up. Cliff?
So one of the other problems you have is with the budget that the sheet that they gave us, you don't, I guess you want to be able to also determine whether or not that should be charged to you, like whether it's a lifeguard
Right,
or stuff like that.
So you use that one example. Yeah.
Okay.
In the seasonal.
It's definitely a tourist or summer related, but it's also those part of that 30,000 rental people who are also using those beaches and those lifeguards. It's not just the 2,500 who are staying in the hotels or the day trippers. Yeah.
Okay.
Further questions or comments? Greg?
Phil, is there a square foot figure available for the Children's Beach concession building and bathhouse? The reason I ask is I'm sure Selectman DeCosta will bring it up, the cost per square foot. We have the $445,000 that was approved at last year's, or the 2013 ATM, and it looks like there's another 202,000 proposed for this year's ATM.
I would defer to my,
Is there any figures available for the square
David or
footage of that
Kate, if
building?
either of you.
How large that building is?
Please come to the microphone. Norm, thank you.
Hello, Kate Hamilton, Party Director of Visitor Services.
Thank you.
We don't run that concession. I run Children's Beach and all the activities, but in the process that they're doing right now of rebuilding, I have not been brought to the table with that yet, which I hope to be brought to the table. And John, one thing too with your question, you were saying that we, wanted a carte blanche. You have to remember Visitor Services has taken over quite a few different department activities and responsibilities. But we never over the past 4 years, we haven't gotten any more money to do it. Only this year. So what we're saying, what Phil is saying, is that he wants to be able to go and say, this year is the 100th anniversary of Children's Beach. We want to do something special, whatever. Can we ask for the money for that? And maybe have someone say yes. That's kind of what he was being clear about.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I didn't think that I said that you were looking for carte blanche. I was
Well,
trying to.
you said we wanted to be different than other departments.
Well, yeah, that's true, you do.
But no, we don't, because what we want to be able to do, with all due respect, what we want to be able to do is say, we want to go to and get ambassadors for a venue that people arrive for tourism, and we were told no. So we just want to be, that's fine too. There's some things we should be told no, but there's some things we shouldn't be told no, if we want to maintain the world-class destination that we are. And I'm going to defer back to Phil. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. David.
Phil, is there any reason why quarter-over-quarter tax revenues are higher in September, October, and November than they are in June, July, and August? And that's the consistency from the prior?
I was puzzled by that one.
It's the same as the prior fiscal year? I mean, the implication is that we run a lower occupancy during the busiest months, and somebody's shaking their head no, but...
Well, we get the income
Kate-
from the
Kate.
Department of Revenue much later.
I'm sorry, since we're on, I apologize. Thank you.
There's a delay in from when it's earned to when it's
Recognized.
received. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to give you a real brief. In the summer, of course, we're all busy. 4th of July, we have 70,000 people on Nantucket Island. But then when we go into the fall, we start the wedding revenues, which is an incredible source of income. We then, my office started Nantucket New Year's, and we have also Christmas Stroll. So that has become a new revenue source. And then we have just in February, March, but we always, Brenda McConville, who I've been working with for years, who gives me the amount of monies from Department of Revenue, we always get them a little later. They're not scientific, but we know through the whole year we can really do measurement. And if you ever wanted, we'd be happy to provide you the 22 years that I've been there so you can see the revenue stream.
No, that's, you can keep your data. I was just more curious on why and you've answered the question, it's a timing issue.
Thank you. Joe.
Just a quick sort of a background question. I'm not familiar with all the history and wasn't at the ATM last year, so the Visitor Services, it's a department of the town, it's a separate, volunteer body. I'm getting a little confused as to who works for the town and who doesn't and who's a volunteer or
Visitor
what.
Services is a town department. Kate, David are full-time, year-round employees of it. They have seasonal employees throughout the community, throughout the year, mostly in the summer. They are answerable to the town manager, as all other departments are. No question about that. The Visitor Services Advisory Committee is a selectman-appointed 7-member committee that is designed to meet with, evaluate the performance of the Visitor Services Office, and also to create suggestions for improvements of services, to represent the town, in essence, with that committee.
Okay. And that's that's what you represent, Mr. Reed.
I'm chairman of that committee at this time.
Thank you. Got it.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Further questions? Okay.
I have another question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Phil, I guess I'll play a little devil's advocate here.
Okay.
With the seasonal private residences being rented, you know, it did come before town meeting, I guess twice at least?
I think it's come twice now, yeah.
And if I recall, it was pretty soundly defeated, or was it close?
No, it's very, very close.
Close?
One was about 10 votes.
10 or 12 votes difference, yeah.
I think you would have some seasonal residence owners saying, I pay taxes, that's my contribution, and they would probably give you an argument saying, by doing so, it gives them the ability or the right to rent out their residence.
I think the key factor is not the residence, because the resident does not pay it. The tenant pays it. I had a rental house in Florida for several years. I never lost a rental because of the 6% tax down there. It was collected by Caldwell Banker, the agency who rented our rooms. They would not rent from me unless I was registered with the state. They collected the tax. They submitted it. I don't think our real estate industry, with all due respect, wants the burden of collecting money and then forwarding it to the state. The restaurant industry doesn't like it either. The hotel industry doesn't like it, but we all do it. In New Hampshire, when I rent a property, I pay the 6% tax up there, and there's not a question about. I've never said I'm not going to pay that tax or rent that. They have a tax on their rentals up there. You're looking at millions of dollars, I think, over the next few years if it could ever get through. The selectmen might have to bite the bullet and say we're going to do it, and let the chips fall where they may. It's a tough decision, and I know it's not going to be a popular one with a large segment.
Sure.
But the confusion is the owner of the house does not pay the tax.
Mr. Chairman? And I think, and you touch upon an important part of it. It's, I look at it upon how do you enforce this? It becomes voluntary in a way, or it's up to the real estate owners, but you also have other aspects coming into play. Now you have Airbnb. And I'm assuming people are familiar with what Airbnb is. It's a rental system that's out there.
Yeah, you can go online at HomeAway or anything else and do it outside of that, and that's always a possibility.
So then, how do you enforce paying tax on that? How does that come about? It's going to become it comes down to the owner of the property voluntarily paying that tax. How does the town?
If he lists it with a real estate agent, it doesn't become voluntary.
But Airbnb typically doesn't involve real estate agents.
Yeah.
But one thing, I just read a big article in the New York Times about Airbnb. You probably saw that. They're having some real problems right now, and they're dealing with legislation through New York City. You have to remember, every room that gets rented out on Nantucket that does the rooms tax is licensed by the town of Nantucket and inspected. So also you can see, too, that if we were having problems with that, our revenue would be going down, but our revenue was continually going up. And plus, you know, if anybody here goes to Florida, you know, they all have the rooms tax for the rentals. So it's more of something that is just brand new for Massachusetts, but they've had the rooms tax specifically for licensed lodging for years.
Even Mr. DeLeo, our fearless leader up there in the House, is starting to soften on this a little bit. There's a lot of pressure from the Cape area, too, because the money's come back to the town. And that's what it's all about, is helping the town's revenue.
Christie?
Phil, do you have maybe a trend over the last 4 or 5 years of rooms that pay this tax as opposed to rental houses that don't, as far as the occupancy? Are the occupancy of the rooms that pay the tax going down? Because I know over the past 10 or 15 years, we've lost a lot of rooms.
The loss of rooms has gone down,
Right.
yet the rates have gone up, so the tax has gone up with it.
Okay.
Okay.
And will continue to go up, because I don't think the rates are going down in the near future.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, David. Yes.
I would like to thank you all very much.
Oh, one more question before you go.
What's the rationale for a tax on the rental of private homes? I mean,
Okay.
I'm curious about,
I would ask the state of Florida what they do with the millions of dollars that come in from that. I don't know what the rationale is. It's a market that's out there. It's an opportunity for the community to gain some extra revenue. It's considered an unfairness that homes can rent for multi-thousands of dollars per week, and pay no tax. They get rid of it, they pay real estate taxes, but so do the B&Bs and so do the hotels. It's just kind of a fairness thing. Our guests are all paying it. Why aren't those guests paying it? We're helping to generate revenue to the town through the town share of the room
yeah, I
occupancy
mean,
tax.
it doesn't strike me that the town of Nantucket needs a lot more revenue. I mean, we
I
seem to
haven't
have.
heard them decreasing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, realistically, I mean, and rationally, we're not a poor town, and we're not.
No, but to just let you know some projects in the past, Jetty's Beach concession was built. Also, Children's Beach bandstand was built. The town of Nantucket's Marine Department was built. When we used to get the higher amount for the rooms tax, that's where that money went. So and we all are talking about the future here, and we have to look at new buildings and things like that. I also heard, I don't know if this would be possible, but I also heard something about snow plowing today. Maybe it would be a way to designate some of those funds. It would go to the town in the services of the taxpayers that are here. From a tourism point of view, the rooms tax goes to a lot of those things that make it a better experience. It used to pay for the fireworks many years ago, too. Now it will, too. And also, we also used to do beach cleaning out of that. We do all the events down at Children's Beach. We have 10,000 people down on Main Street for 4th of July. And we're, with the New Year's project, we probably had a few hundred rooms. I just spoke to the High Line, and they went up 15% of the amount of people that came over here. So working on all this stuff, making it a desirable place, and getting at some tax in that benefits us all, I think it's a good win-win situation between all the sectors.
So the revenue you don't get goes to,
The town of Nantucket.
and what do we do with it?
Well, I mean, they have the transparency form.
But I mean,
which-
aren't we, all the things that you just mentioned isn't, I mean, you may not be spending the money, but the town's spending the money on it, so it's not like it's not getting spent on things that are.
No, but I think what Phil is saying, he just wants to have input. So he can look at this and say, it would be like designing a building that we were all going to use. You want all the same people at the table to talk about it. So you're not, redoing things and things like that, and also having an opportunity where I say, you know what, I was really limited with something with 4th of July this year. Could I ask for money, regardless, John, if they gave it to me or not, but to have that sense of growth? Because this income is growing every year. And that doesn't just mean that we get more money just because it's growing, but it should give us an opportunity to be able to ask.
So what you've asked for this year, so far I've heard that the Board of Selectmen are not supportive of the Airport Ambassador Program. Is there anything else that they've not been supportive of?
That's just one example at the moment, but that's the only,
For this year, though, I think that is correct. I think it's just the airport kiosk that
Yeah.
wasn't supported on your budget. I believe that's correct. And there were some supplementary requests that were approved, if I'm not mistaken, for staffing, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we had to work out some things because we had a consolidation. And just on another side, too, my office has been working with town administration, redoing all the events for the town in Nantucket, working on that, and we've already had a $2,000 income coming in from the wine festival. So a lot of what we're working on not only is going to make things better here, but it's also going to bring in revenue. Because it wouldn't make sense to me to go before any of you and ask for stuff if I couldn't find a place where it was coming from.
That does make sense. I'd like to just, an editorial comment. I think the transparency document is certainly a big step compared to where we were a year ago.
And we are so grateful for that.
And I think that, I'm trying to get down to the brass tacks, the biggest bone of contention, for lack of a better term, is in two areas, seasonal officers and lifeguards, where there is a philosophical divide on how that money is being allocated. This year, the budget is set, and so we're really looking at more for future discussions. And I think, this committee could certainly weigh in on that difference there and give an opinion. But I guess what I'd like to say is point out the positive steps from last year for them. Anyway, so that helps. And unless there's any other questions, I would like to thank you all for coming.
Right.
It's always very informative and certainly helps this committee see areas that we usually don't delve into.
Cool. And we appreciate the opportunity to come before you. It's not going to be an annual event. It's something that's near and dear to all of us, how our visitors see Nantucket.
I'm sorry, not to interrupt. I do have one question. This is on the renter's tax. Has your committee taken an official stance for support of this?
On the what tax?
The rental tax, the home rental tax?
Home rental tax.
Has your committee taken? You have not. Okay.
We have.
No, that's fine. I'm just curious because you're talking about it. I just want to know if there's an official position.
Very familiar with the hotel rental tax, but not with the house rental.
All right, thank you.
It would be a source of income.
Anyway, but I didn't interrupt it. But again, thank you for coming. I'm sure we'll have more discussions as time goes on.
And we're available at any time, individually or collectively,
Okay.
to meet with you.
And likewise.
If you have issues, okay.
And likewise,
We're not hiding anything. We're not hiding anything.
I hope not. No, thank you very much. Okay. Yes.
I have a comment, but not for the presenters, but just a comment on the whole.
Jogi, switch that microphone to Jim.
Oh, sorry.
We were asked at this point. Yes, Jim.
My observation, it could be completely wrong, is that,
Sure.
forget the, visitor services aside, but in this structure, if you have a source of revenue of X, and you are spending X minus 50% or something, and then the town manager is going to come in and say, well, we've got to demonstrate that, so we're going to reallocate this stuff to make it come up to the number, and that's where these percentages become pretty arbitrary. So, I don't know if that makes sense. So I think the whole percentage, actually, the concept is, there's a lot of time being spent of justifying, well, this may or may not be in this category, or should be in this category, and I'm not sure where that moves the ball forward. I'm just speaking in general, not visitor services. So, and my observation about an advisory board is they're advisory to the manager or the town manager, the department director or the.
I believe the committee, and jump in, the committee is advisory to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
The visitor service. Am I nodding? That's not ahead. Is that correct?
Well.
Okay.
So we're appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Appointed by, I'm not sure, but, they're advisory to that function, visitor services. To me, your advisory is, the manager is the conduit to the town administration. So I would see them, if they came up with these annually, I'm not saying the visitor service, but advisory boards in general, if they said, here's our priorities 1 to 10, this is the most important, and towns down below, and there's a budget process for getting those through the general fund of which this is, and I would come from an advisory board to the manager of that area, or department director, whatever their titles are, to town manager. And I think and I think this other stuff, it gets confusing when, so that's where I think there's a conduit of where that could happen now without, so that's just a comment.
Okay. All right. Very good. David.
Where does the balance of the room tax get spent? Brian, Libby, somebody?
In the general fund?
Yeah. No, I know it gets spent in the general fund, but I know money is fungible, but
Right, I think you could say it's spent on almost everything that was identified here.
well, I see what they are spending a certain amount on,
Right.
but then where's the what's?
It goes
what
in the
if-
general fund, and it gets spent on police services, fire services, visitor services, cleaning the streets, snow plowing, all the town
Okay.
services.
So it's,
You're talking about like 70%, you mean?
yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
or,
It's not specific to one particular program or activity. It's all of the town services.
okay.
John?
So it truly
Oh,
is considered fungible, and it's just,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could argue that we have spent exactly what the 30% room occupancy tax number is on exact visitor services projects and items.
John?
Yeah. One of the things that occurs to me is that, excuse me, he's trying to keep me honest. One of the things that occurs to me that we may want, in the past, years ago, visitor services came before us, this board, and we talked about their budget. That hasn't happened in a couple of years that I know of.
About 5 years.
And my guess is that we may want to look at that and say that from a transparency issue, I mean, we're not having much input here on it.
Nope.
Because that's, we don't look at all the departments, but we try to look at the large departments. But, sometimes maybe we've got to look at departments that have, it's not a matter of how the size of the department as much as it's what's the influence that department has on certain key factors of the town. So we may want to consider that in the
Okay.
future.
Noted.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
Mr. Chairman.
Good. Jim?
I think just, again, visitor services aside, we look at the big departments, but there may be appropriate to do on a rotational basis all, like once every 3 years, once every 5 years, because we may lose sight of that. And just have as much to educate us about, gee, what's gone on the last few years, not so much to review and question the budget so much, but just to be aware, because we do get questions out in the community.
That's a good
Or we get
point.
questions at town meeting, what about visitor service? Why is visitor services doing this year, or why is some other department we haven't talked to in 5 years doing that? So there may be some benefit to that on a rotating basis for all the departments, not just picking one.
No, that makes sense. That's.
Or $3 million department is probably, or income source. Well, it's important. It's not the biggest issue on your board.
No, they're all important. We're the stewards for the taxpayer. There they are. Okay. Well, that's.
We thank you very much.
You're welcome. A few things to ponder on. All right. Thank you again. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and move along. The next item is a review of the warrant articles for the 2015 annual town meeting. And there is a copy of the warrant that was sent electronically, and Mr. Kickham was kind enough to pick us up copies. So thank you very much for doing that. And Mrs. Gibson, the floor is yours. You want to go through as you see fit? I know we're going to be hearing zoning and real estate next week. And I think the financial articles probably are not ready yet, so just the ones that you think relevant, the floor is yours.
If you want. Oh, thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Okay, so do you want me to just take you through each article? Or
Would that be
you've already
easier?
been through the citizens, so I'll skip those? I mean, I don't-
Yeah, when we get to
I
this.
really don't, they're not coming from us.
Yeah, no, you don't have to do the citizens, that's fine. But at this point, that's fine, yeah. After the public hearing, then we'll go.
Okay, Article 1 is the usual receipt of reports. Article 2 is the usual unpaid bills. I'm going to kind of skip through here and.
That's
unless
fine,
you-
unless anybody has any questions before we
Okay.
get through. And I guess
4.
just again, before you go, on the financial articles, is that they're still being worked on, so these articles that are printed here, there'll be numbers that'll be applied to various ones that
In the
we'll go
motion.
over again, in the motion, thank you, that we'll
Right.
go over again.
Yeah, actually,
Go ahead, Joe.
a newbie sort of dumb question. I've read about 3 annual town meeting warrants since I've moved to Nantucket permanently. Is there a reason why they're written in such arcane language instead of saying what Libby just said?
Okay.
It's the usual
Okay,
budget.
here's why.
I mean,
Here's why we,
I
here's,
read through this the other
We
day,
always
and
need
some
to
of these
roll
things are
out.
Okay.
impossible
Here's-
to understand what the hell they're. There's an article for that.
here's why. Joe, here, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to pretend to be one, is that the specific language that is in these articles and the motions has to be worded in legalese, so that while it may sound arcane, it is a consistency that will hold up in a court of law, I think, or in a state court, I think. Okay.
Well,
Would that be a fair way to, Jim? And then John?
In the past, if not this year, there is a warrant article that the warrants be written in English.
That's
idiom.
correct. And that was
And
last year.
that's been turned down because town council said no, we can't do it that way.
Yeah, but what we do try to do is that, and I commend the town manager and a committee that you put together, is that on various articles, almost all the articles, is that there is a common language explanation. Is that a fair way of putting it on that? Which certainly helps.
Yeah.
Okay. So, John, and then Craig, and then hopefully
Well,
that helps.
Jim really hit what I was going to say, and that is that this has been brought up. It's the town council said it isn't. We can't do it that way, but the town, but Libby or whomever puts together if you when you come in the door, you can get a pass out which really explains each article and what it means. So I think that was the attempt to try to make it easier for people to understand. But you have to it's a separate document. You know what I mean?
There's a guide that explains the articles in English at town meeting.
Wow.
That's correct.
Sign me up for the Town Warrant for Dummies edition then.
No, it's not. Well, your first year, you got a freebie this year. Craig, did you want to add to that?
Just to say that I found the guide very helpful, that it was in plain English, and it helped to explain the articles, and
Thank
assuming
you.
it will happen again.
Yes.
Okay.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all annual financial articles.
Right.
11 and 12 are appropriations for the fire station and the school. And they are written so that the funding is dependent upon a Prop 2.5 debt exclusion vote at the subsequent election, which takes place a week or so after town meeting. 13, 14, 15 all have to do with enterprise fund budgets. 16 is the annual Waterways Improvement Fund appropriation. 17 is the annual Airport Aviation Fuel Revolving Fund appropriation. 18 is a new article, a special article for an appropriation for the airport carbon neutral program, although it's in the warrant now, but I'm not too sure it's going to be going forward by the time we get to town meeting, and I'm sure that Tom will be coming in to go over that with you.
He
at some
talked a
point
little bit
soon.
about that, but I think we'll be coming back.
Okay.
It looks like it'll probably take a no action.
Okay,
kind of
but we
thing.
wanted it in just in case
Right.
something changed.
Right. Okay.
19 and 20 are annual articles. 21 is an annual article. 22, we're working on what unused borrowing authority we could rescind. That's kind of an annual article.
Yep.
23 is annual. 24 has become annual. That's the OPEB appropriation. 25 is a new financial article. It's a one-time authorization to borrow for Easy Street bulkhead renovation. This is the result of a grant and loan that we've been approved for through the state, and we will need authorization from town meeting to borrow to pay back the loan.
Well, so that'll be a debt exclusion?
No,
It will not.
no, it will not. It will be paid for in the operating budget, and it actually won't probably hit the operating budget till fiscal 17.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
All collect, the only thing I'd ask is,
They're all collective bargaining.
the only thing I would ask is that, as this committee, as in the past, and in the past has taken a firm line on adequate time for review.
Right, which
Okay.
you've already reviewed all of ours.
Right,
I
now,
believe.
just to throw it out, we want to be to the
Yeah.
public. Yeah.
Which is why we already reviewed ours with you.
Okay. Okay. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay.
34 and 35 are citizen appropriations, but for the CPC.
then and then 30.
Same with 36.
is this, we're still tying up the loose ends with that, that's the,
Yep, I think I got something from town council possibly today, which answered a question.
John?
No. That's what I was going to ask, if they're, right now it's up in the air.
I don't know if it's up in the air. I think there was, Brian might know more than me. There was some kind of a question about it that the CPC raised or somebody
Yes.
raised, but I believe it's been answered.
Okay, so when we get,
So you'll get more
when we get
information
that,
on
then
that
we'll
as
go.
you
Great,
develop
that's
your motion.
perfect, that's fine. Okay, then, all right, go ahead.
37 is a citizen warrant article, appropriation of server, for replacement servers for the town clerk, and I think that is actually just going to come from the IT.
I think we
Prior
already took
year
action
IT.
on that.
You might have already done that one. 38, you did something with that one already. 39 is citizen, 40 is citizen. 41 is citizen. 42 started out as a bylaw and then, through legal review, turned into a zoning bylaw amendment and a home rule petition. This is a selectman-sponsored article. It relates to what it says there, coastal erosion liability waiver. This would be for people who build their homes going forward, not retroactively, within a certain number of feet of what is known as shorefront land as defined in the zoning bylaw, would have to execute a waiver that the town would not be liable for if and when their house erodes into the ocean.
Okay. And that's a zoning bylaw.
That is, and it's a home rule petition, and it goes on for a little while,
Yeah, I
a
see
couple
that.
pages.
Must be more than a zoning bylaw.
So
Okay,
if the
the-
house rolls into the water, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, go ahead. What's that?
Mr. Chairman, so if the house rolls into the water now, technically someone could try to sue the town for not keeping the island where it was?
You know, people sue for a lot of different things,
Well,
Let's move on.
so possibly.
That's right.
Okay,
John, did you want
I'm
to
going to
comment?
skip
you know,
ahead.
Libby,
Yes.
the question, one of the things that we've always been stuck with, though, to go to what Joe's talking about, is that when we have, we've had to rebuild roads so people have access.
Well, yeah.
Does this change that at all?
Well, no, that would be different. We've had to, in at least one instance, add a different access to Sheep Pond Road.
Sheep Pond,
Yes,
that's what I was
because
thinking
it
of,
did erode away. But this is more, there are statutes that already exist for that type of situation. This is specifically relating to buildings.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yep.
I'm going to skip all the
Zoning, I think the next one's the
Yeah.
bylaw sewer.
Yeah,
right?
Actually,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I don't know anything about them.
Zoning's
so-
coming in next, well, zoning is coming in a week from tomorrow. So that helps.
well, I'd just like to point out to fellow members, particularly Article 62, tertiary, the bylaw amendment for tertiary dwellings, which is basically going to, if it's successful, allow for 3 dwellings on a lot. And I would suggest that there is some potential fiscal impact associated with that, with up to 120 permits a year given for tertiary dwellings.
Okay.
And so we're basically adding not only a secondary dwelling, now we're going to, if this is successful, create tertiary dwellings. It doesn't look like it comes with any sort of affordability or any number of other restrictions. I know the planning board had the selectmen put it in. Libby, do you know if it's, what's driving the planning board on this? Is there somebody or some things behind this? As a
I think there is, but I don't remember exactly what all the details are. But Andrew can explain.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would suggest that's a time to quiz Andrew on that. See, because and what's that? John?
I was asking the same question.
Well, we'll have our opportunity next Tuesday. That's about, because I don't know either. I think the next one then is the bylaw amendment for the sewer, Article
Yep.
71.
So 71 and 72 are town-sponsored articles that would put in and take out parcels in the Sconset and town sewer districts. And those have already gone through planning, health, and DPW.
Oh,
Then there are 3, I think, citizen warrant articles relating to the sewer districts. The first one's 73. I think those parcels have already been added into the town article.
Oh, they are? Okay.
74, I'm not entirely sure if those were in or not, and I'm not entirely sure about 75, but those were being worked on last I knew.
And again, just a second, just a reminder, on these sewer articles, that before we take action, there's a three-member committee, the health director, the planning director, and the DPW director, who recommend or not recommend these before we address them. So,
That's what I was going to ask.
oh, thank you, John.
The board has a public hearing scheduled on February 18th pursuant to the Sewer Act, which requires them to make a recommendation or act on sewer district articles, so that's scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
76 is a town-sponsored bylaw amendment that relates to amending the poles and wires bylaw to allow for a municipal equipment to be able to be placed as we need it to be placed on the utility poles or other structures.
That sounds pretty reasonable. Is there any
Yeah.
controversy with that?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I haven't
good.
heard any.
Sounds
It's kind
good.
of a cleanup.
Okay, great.
77 is just a little bit of a cleanup to our our peace and good order bylaw as it relates to public entertainment. And we had a set fee in there of $25, and we'd like the Board of Selectmen to be able to set a fee from time to time and instead of having to go back to town meeting every time we want to change it. There's a statutory limit on that, I believe, of $100, and we're not recommending that we go to that level anyway. And we wanted to include the addition you'll see at the end of it, appropriate food service permits shall be obtained from the health department. That wasn't in there before, and sometimes people feel they don't need the permit from the health department. So we want to make it clear that they do.
Okay.
Article 78 is a town-sponsored article to a different section of the Peace and Good Order bylaw as it relates to street performers and amplification of their performances. We had an issue last summer, and basically the street performers without this can be as loud as they like, and that was causing some issues, so this would put a little bit of a restriction on that.
All right, good.
And also prohibit the placement of power cords along the sidewalk, which was also an issue.
Okay.
79 is a town-sponsored, basically it's a rewrite of the Wharves and Waterways bylaw. This bylaw hasn't been really overhauled in years, and there are a lot of items in it that are simply not applicable any longer. So we've taken the time to basically rewrite it and update it. I haven't heard any controversy about it. Hopefully it's not controversial.
Okay.
Article 80 is a citizen-sponsored article
Yep.
about the balloons. Article 81, we're moving into general law acceptances now, is a town-sponsored article to accept Mass General Law as it relates to establishing a capital project stabilization fund. We've talked about that here.
Right, and there was some talk in this committee that we would compile a list of recommendations to the selectmen at that point, so that still is on the table if we'd like.
82 and 83 are citizen warrant articles. 84 is a home rule petition as it relates to the airport fuel revolving fund. It would lift the cap that's established under Mass General Law on the aggregate limit of revolving funds. And this is let's see, 1, 2, 3, this will be the fourth time we've submitted it. Article 85 is a resubmittal of a town-sponsored home rule petition pertaining to the Community Preservation Committee. 87 is a town-sponsored home rule petition that would convey property from the county to the town. We like to do that in case the counties ever do get taken over by the state so that we don't have any property subject to.
Can we go
taken
back to
over.
86 for a second? The increasing the residential property exemption?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped that.
That's all right.
This is a home rule petition that the board talked about quite a bit, and basically, it seeks to allow the town to increase the residential property tax exemption from 20% up to 30%. In order to do that, you must have special legislation.
Okay.
There are some municipalities that have received approval for this. Boston is one of them. Somerville might be another. Can't remember exactly. But anyway,
Okay.
that's what that is.
All right. Now, there was some discussion, but maybe this is apples and oranges, about the commercial residential exemption, does that tie into this, or is that different?
No, that's different. That's the
Okay.
tax rate shift
Okay.
between commercial, open space, and residential, and that is something that the board can do.
Can do on, that's what I thought, okay.
And they, yeah,
right.
they'll probably have more discussion about that at a later time.
All right, thank you.
So back to 87, that's
Yeah.
the conveyance of properties from county to town. 88 would be the conveyance of properties to the land bank and potentially the Nantucket Land Conservation Land Trust. These are authorization home rule petitions. They require special legislation if they are going to happen. '89 is an article that the board put in right before they adopted the warrant. It relates to the hospital and a home rule petition. It would transfer a portion of the 47 Prospect Street property, the Mill Hill Park property, to the hospital and allow for mitigation at 1 Milestone Road. If
We'll like to hear a board take on this one. I know I would.
yes, I'm sure selectmen, I don't see them.
I don't want to hear that one.
Will be in to review that.
I'll make a formal request if we need to.
In an unusual spot here is Article 90, which is actually a zoning map change, which relates directly to Article 89. So
Okay.
that's why it's in a
There.
different spot than most zoning articles. 91 also relates to that because it requires special legislation to use parkland for a different purpose. And that is a little bit long.
Right.
Article 90,
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, that's true.
Just on all these, I'm not sure obviously which lots this pertain to, but I thought, at least the last I heard, was that the hospital was going to build on its own property. So are all these things still necessary? Might they come out, or do you have to do them just in case anyway?
Well, that is my understanding as well, and there was a feeling on the board that this might allow for some flexibility in the event that it's needed.
Okay.
91
Two, is that? Oh, 91,
is a
excuse me.
citizen.
Oh, yeah, this is
article.
one, right. Yep.
Oh, you know what, I might have mischaracterized that one.
No, that's the citizen one.
The first one I talked about, in 89, I
The
think is also
symbol.
a home rule petition. But 91 is a citizen article.
Right.
92 is a citizen article relating to the HDC. As is 93 and 94.
Right. And,
94 is exceptionally long.
yeah, it is.
Some might say excessively long,
Yeah.
like me.
Excuse me,
Yep.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, have we, I believe when Ms. Williams was here and Mr. Cohen was here, they
Yep.
spoke about the fact that they were going to
Yep.
have language.
That's correct.
I'm assuming
We haven't got
this
it yet.
looks like what we saw before. We have not received the language.
We have not. This is the article that she submitted by the deadline. Her intention, and I don't want to speak for her, but I believe, but my understanding of her intention was that there's a work group that they were meeting, and we were going to be presented with information by next week. I have yet to see any information. So as far as I'm concerned, what we have here is what we're presented with. There is, and the town council has been doing an exhaustive review on these articles, and there'll be some recommendations coming forth from them, which will also help us too.
My-
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my understanding more a little bit was that there was some discussion about the selectmen putting in an article
Right.
to
Right, that's
adopt 40C and/or make some changes to the existing legislation.
Mm-hmm.
But what we understood from town council was that that process is exhaustive,
Right.
and Chapter 40C requires certain other actions need to be taken
Taken, right.
beforehand, which there was no time for.
All right, I think that, I mean, there's still some things in play here, but it's the, if I was in Vegas, I would say that this is a tough haul to.
Patriots.
Well, this has been a tough haul to overcome. But getting back to, there will be more information coming from the sponsor of this article, from that work group, and from town council.
And
to
so
help us decide.
procedurally, if there's different language, it would have to be introduced on the floor.
On the motion. No, well, if there's different language, this is the article right here. We can do that in our motion.
No, but if the proponent brings a different language, she would have to introduce it.
She could do it in one of
Town.
two ways. She could introduce it here to us at this committee, and we could vote that on as our motion to get into the printed warrant. Or she could present it on town meeting floor.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yo,
No,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm
No,
not
I
sure I
just was
explained it.
wondering
Yeah,
procedurally,
It's
how, if in fact they get the language, how it would proceed.
if we get it before if she presents it and we vote on that in a positive motion before this warrant goes to print, it would be in the printed warrant. If she presents it to us and we vote it down, she has the option of going to town meeting floor directly to present it there. So there's a lot in play. So. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. So I think 95.
Okay, 95, 96, and 97 all relate to Baxter Road. 95 would authorize the board to dispose of certain interests in a parcel of land that would then potentially be used for alternative access. 96 and 97, I believe, further that idea. They're required to implement the idea if we are going to do that. 98 is an amendment to a vote that we took at the 2013 annual town meeting pertaining to the so-called industrial land out by the airport that's owned by the town that would potentially, hopefully, be the site of a future bulk fuel tank farm.
Yeah.
And previously, the article was about leasing the land, only leasing, and now it would authorize the board to actually convey it.
Okay. Good. Okay. Cliff?
Yeah, the Baxter Road articles, didn't we do a bunch of those last year, or did we forget about them?
We didn't act on them,
We didn't act on
no.
John?
What's the purpose of, what is the difference from the town's point of view, or from your point of view, of leasing versus purchasing?
Purchasing would give the other party site control, which is something that they have indicated is necessary for financing. A 100-year lease or a 99-year lease might do the same thing,
Yeah.
but I think the board would like the flexibility to be able to negotiate a sale or a long-term lease. A sale also, or a conveyance, transfer, or whatever, also would relieve the town of any future potential liability. Should there be a need for that?
Then there might be.
Okay.
Well, depending on what happens there, bulk fuel tank farm might be something you don't want to have to clean up
Poof.
later.
Jim?
But usually in the real estate, this is a real estate, what we just discussed here, but usually it says by lease. Dispose of the fee, or doesn't it usually say to sell,
What,
convey, or lease?
What,
Which one are you?
I thought-
You're talking 98, Jim?
98?
Oh, I was looking at 97, it's 98, okay.
It's 98.
Okay, speak up.
Okay.
Okay,
And
99
Yep.
is a long-term lease authorization for certain town-owned parcels in this, over here, to the left of this building, that would ideally be used for town-sponsored housing or affordable housing, which we've already been talking about. And there was an article, I can't remember exactly when, it doesn't say in here, 3 or 4 years ago to do a long-term lease, which I think didn't pass or
Okay.
didn't get
There was
acted
something.
upon. I can't remember exactly.
Mr. Chairman,
Jim?
is there, somebody had said to me that Remain is funding a study?
Remain is going to fund the design, the services of a designer to help come up with options for how the housing would be placed.
Thank you.
And the idea is that that will be done before town meeting so that people can see what it might potentially look like.
Good. I didn't know that. That's good news.
Article 100 is an article that the airport asked to be submitted. It relates to the gas station there on Airport Road that they discovered didn't actually have a long-term lease authorization and needs it.
Oh, okay.
101 is the conveyance of miscellaneous lands that would go to either private parties or others. that relates back to the home rule petition that allows these transfers in the first place, and then this would be the actual authorization to do the transfers. 102 and 103 are a bunch of parcels that we would acquire to clear title and then potentially convey via the yard sale program.
Okay.
104 is an unfortunate situation. This article was in the warrant last year,
Right.
and apparently there's an action that has to be taken either 30 days before town meeting or 30 days after, I can't recall which, in order to make the public ways layouts effective, and it didn't get done. So it needs
so
to
we're
get the
doing it
approval again.
Okay.
105 is a citizen article.
Yep.
106
Yep.
is a citizen article. 107 is a citizen article.
No, that's a,
no,
that's a board article.
sorry, is a town-sponsored article.
Paper streets.
And Andrew will have to review
Talk
this
about
one.
that.
I think it's some cleanup of easements or cleanup of title
Okay.
things involving roads. 108 is a citizen article. 109 is a citizen article. 110 and 111 are the annual stabilization fund and free cash articles.
Okay.
And then we have the election warrant, which is all of the town officials, as well as the 2 debt exclusion questions
Okay.
for the fire station and the school.
Didn't look too bad. Greg?
Libby, can we go back to Article 12 on the school? I'm not, maybe you could explain to me how the funding from the Massachusetts School Building Authority works and where we are in that process. And
Well, my understanding is that we did not make the eligibility list for the most recent round of funding,
Right.
and we've applied again, although it would be too late if we were actually to get any funds, which in my opinion is highly unlikely anyway. So if, though, something happened and we were able to get the funds, we might need to come back to town meeting for some kind of approval or acceptance. Is that right, Brian? Do you recall if we got school building assistance for the school later after this article? There was some discussion with bond counsel about it, because if we were going to get those funds, this article would need to be rewritten a little bit. But it's so unlikely that
Right. Another one?
next year.
My understanding is it's going to take a few years before there be any determination. We're talking to school people. We wouldn't know within a year anyway.
Probably not.
So I think we're kind of on our own on that one, in essence.
I mean, I guess the concern is, you go to the MSBA website, and they claim they have billions of dollars available for school building, and then you go into the individual towns and cities throughout the state, and there's Wellesley getting millions of dollars, and other well-off communities that, as I read the qualifications, they go into how you qualify, and it's who the students are and what the income qualifications are, so to speak. So I guess I'm confused why other wealthy communities, wealthier than Nantucket even, are getting millions of dollars for schools, and we're not.
That's not something I can answer.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a question. Just in the gym. That's a question for Thursday for the superintendent, because my understanding, I've had discussions with him, and again, just paraphrasing, the answer I received is that we're way low on the priority list. So from what you're mentioning, is that's a good point to bring up. I'd like to hear that answer myself. Jim?
So I remember when Diane O'Neill presented this to her school project to the Board of Selectmen, she summarized that process and said exactly what Libby said, that they've looked at the criteria, they've made the applications in the past, they're going to continue to make the applications, but we don't meet the minimum requirements. So.
Okay.
So, yeah, it'll be a good follow-up.
No, I think it is. I think it's a worthy question. See. Okay, David?
Can I move on to another?
Yeah, we're all done with Article 12? Sure, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
On Article 7, are there any increases in Article 7?
I
in any of
believe,
these rates? that-
I believe the only increase
Town clerk?
is to the town clerk's salary,
Yeah, town
2.5 over last year.
2.5%?
Yep.
I still
We
say we
didn't-
should cut the moderator.
We didn't, don't say that. We should, we did not, we talked about it, but we did not increase the seasonal salary schedule. We did some research with other towns and find that we're pretty far above what they are.
So just the town clerk. All right.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions overall? Any other- So, just to go from here, the public hearing is on Monday, and we've already had a public hearing on citizens warrant articles, and we're free to act again on any of those, and we have. We're just waiting for some more information. But after next Monday, then any of these articles we can act on. We will get a presentation from the planning director on the zoning articles and the real estate articles next Tuesday and Thursday. And then after that, we will start crafting some motions, I think. So, any questions on that? Okay. Okay, very good. Next item is the subcommittee to look at pensions. As you recall, last week, Mr. Sperry, Mr. Grouse, and Mr. Williams kindly volunteered to form the subcommittee. There was going to be a meeting on Thursday, but due to the cancellation of our meeting, and, well, it just didn't work out. So we would like to go in, this group again, set up a time to meet. We have not gotten a charge yet from the selectmen, but with the weather, they've gotten pushed back, so I'm sure one will be forthcoming soon enough. Okay, so.
It's on their agenda for Wednesday.
Is it? Okay. Oh, yeah, I guess I better go. Okay.
But I don't have it
I'll bet, I guess I gotta go Wednesday. So, anyway, time for a meeting. I would suggest, if Thursday at 3 o'clock would work for the three?
Okay.
If that works out okay?
It doesn't work.
It does not work for you?
Work for me. I'm gone from Wednesday till following Wednesday.
Okay. Wednesday and Wednesday. Okay. The issue is that we have to have 48 hours to post for the open meeting law. Okay. Well, let's see. Then if this Thursday won't work, how about the 12th? Will you be back on the 12th?
I'm back on the evening of the 11th, so
Okay.
12th will work fine.
All right. So why don't, Martin, I'm looking at you. How about, could we post something 3 o'clock on February 12th? Hopefully here. I'll send you an agenda. Okay. All right. You guys don't mind. After that, then you guys pick a chairman. You're on your own. So do that. So that's fine for that. Craig did send me some information, and I believe sent to the other subcommittee members too, as I recall.
Yes.
Okay. And what I would like to do, if it's all right, I haven't do it yet, is send that out to everyone, just so everyone knows that. And everyone gets a chance to see it, and it'll be on the part of the packet for the February 12th.
Can I ask a follow-up, Mr. Chairman? So in the future, with
Yep.
this subcommittee,
Yep.
how do we handle material like that? Is it
I think it's similar, just as we would do here. We can certainly disseminate it around, but it'll be on the public record for the meetings.
Okay.
So we'll do it that way. And I think disobeying the open meeting laws. So we don't want to go around that. Okay. Next meeting is tomorrow. I think. Are there any other questions or comments on that? Okay. Now, the next meeting we have is tomorrow. Excuse me. And just give me 1 second. And it is again, the review of warrant articles for the annual town meeting. At this point, we can certainly meet to talk about some of the citizen warrant articles again, but we're still waiting for some more information. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not a critical time. We got a lot accomplished today. It's not a critical time, so if we want to cancel tomorrow, that's fine. The Thursday, the school is coming, in addition to the county.
yet. Yeah, we're doing county first, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope
No,
so.
we're going to make
Well,
you
that's on the
stay.
agenda first, right? Yeah, I think we are. And so, I don't see any issues unless you see, I'm looking at Libya, you, or Brian, or Martin, I don't see any issues if we can cancel tomorrow. Does anybody? Have any? Yeah, because we got to accomplish it with the warrant. So, I think we're doing fine. Now, probably the last one that we'll be canceling, I think. Because after the public hearing, we're going to get those things up. And I would ask if we could get a checklist for all the 110 articles so that we can keep a running score.
Martin, we can use the, I had started one for the board. Yeah, okay. We can take that one.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just something to keep a running
I'll send it to you.
checklist. Okay? So does that all right? Sound all right to everybody? Okay. So then the next meeting will be the 5th, and if anything comes up in the meantime, you'll hear from me. And you'll be getting some information, I'm sure, about those HCC articles pretty soon. So expect something. Okay? So, unless any other comments, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. Okay, second. All right. Everybody have a nice night. See you Thursday. All right. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Jim. You know, Jim, it's a good idea. Okay. That's a good idea. Instead of relying on percentages, just what's your priority? No, I agree with you. No, I think that's a good idea. See you.